Excellent. Well, welcome everybody to another exciting sustainability lunch series. We are thrilled to welcome Erin Baumgartner as our guest speaker today. Conversation facilitated by Bria, a spectacular first-year MBA here at Sloan. Just a couple of quick announcements before we get into today's conversation. The first, we want to take a moment to do a land acknowledgement. We want to recognize that we are sitting on the traditional and unceded territory of the Wampanoag Nation and recognize their forced removal from this territory, and also respect the many diverse Indigenous people who have ties to this land. Before I hand the microphone over to Restev Levy, just for a quick introduction, I want to plug another event that we are hosting next week. Some of you might be interested in the sustainability certificate. Next week, what we're doing is we're inviting faculty members to give a quick pitch of the courses that they're teaching for spring semester. So as you're heading into registration, this would be a really great workshop just to hear about all of the great courses that are being offered in the spring. So if you haven't yet RSVP'd, please do so on Sloan Groups using the QR code on the screen here. And we are thrilled to be partnering with the Food Supply Chain Analytics and Sensing Initiative for today's event. I want to welcome Restev Levy, who's the faculty director of the initiative, to just say a few welcome remarks.
So thank you, everybody. Thanks for having the opportunity to introduce the initiative, and thank you, Erin, for coming to share your experiences with the students and the community. So we have started the initiative several years ago. It engages faculty from 3 schools of the university: the School of Management, the School of Engineering, and the School of Sciences. It involves faculty with expertise over a range of disciplines, including analytics, supply chain management, regulatory science, food science, biomanufacturing, and more. And it's really motivated by the fact that if you think about most societal problems in the world, they somehow connect in a very direct way to food and agriculture supply chains, some of which challenges are related also to sustainability, but more broadly maybe to human health. Our initiative works in 3 major thrusts of work, the first of which are health threats or health impact that emerges from food and agriculture supply chains, including food safety, but also things like zoonotic diseases. These are viruses like SARS, like avian flu, and other viruses that affect human health in a major way, as we know. The second trust is working and trying to leverage data and analytics and sensing to improve the design and operations of agriculture and food markets and systems, including farmer practices. And the third domain is working on issues related to access to food, healthy food in particular, and food waste. Again, that's something that has a major intersection with sustainability. We have projects in China and India, emerging projects in Thailand, and also work in the US. And we also started to develop some courses in this area, and we are very much looking forward to collaborate with other initiatives and also engage with the student community here. We have our own speaker series, and there is an event in December that we will announce and also advertise among the Sustainability Initiative. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the intriguing conversation that we're probably going to have.
Thank you so much. So without wasting any more time, Bria, why don't I hand it over to you?
Okay. Oh, it's on. Great. Hi, everyone. Happy Thursday. Okay. No one's excited? All right. My name is Bria Hardin-Boyer. I go by BHB. I am a first-year student at Sloan. I'm from the Ozarks before Netflix, more specifically Springfield, Missouri. So within the region, that's where I'm from. Super excited about this conversation today with Erin.
Yes.
Can you introduce yourself to the group?
Sure. I'm Erin Baumgartner. I am the co-founder and CEO of Family Dinner. Prior to starting this company, and we'll talk about that in a bit, I spent 10 years at MIT, most recently within the Department of Urban Studies and Planning in a data analytics lab, and now I'm back at MIT working for the Initiative on Combating Systemic Racism, using AI to study systemic racism across a series of vectors. And I am super thrilled to be here, so thank you to everyone.
Awesome. Before we get into the conversation today, I love an icebreaker. So this one's going to be fun. And it does involve engagement, so please feel free to raise your hand or call out. I want everyone, we're all eating. Thanks so much for the food. Who can guess where this food and the ingredients are from? Feel free to just call it out. And we're not talking about the water, but you can do that too. But who can guess where the salads and food are from? Yes? Yes?
Cool. Okay. I'm guessing that. I know carrots are in season for the fall, but depending on what distributor you got, it could have been actually in the U.S. And also cucumbers are the summer. Soybeans probably U.S. Rice rice is below in South Carolina. If you have avocados, it's probably coming from Mexico. Jalapenos, I think, also summer too. I'm remembering my farm share right now, so I think a lot of this right now, because our growing seasons are in U.S., but if this were a couple months forward, you're probably trying to import it from when we flip hemispheres in South America, then becomes better to grow in.
That's an amazing answer.
Really, it really is.
I think the ice has been broken.
Yeah, is one more person, another suggestion? Yes?
As we are talking about food supply chain sustainability, is that all this is from here, like from the soul?
Exactly. So our food today is rather local. It's from 9 Miles East Farms, which is in New York State, but they also have an office in Boston. So it's from both places. But shout out to you for all that knowledge. You taught me something new today. I feel like the ice is broken. I feel like we can engage in our conversation today. So Erin, I would love if you could talk a little bit more about yourself.
Sure.
And how you got here.
Sure. So Family Dinner, the company that we started about 6 years ago while I was still working at MIT, is a local farmers market delivery service. So each week we're sourcing local fish, meat, produce, and grains and delivering it directly to people's homes. That's sort of the primary story. The secondary story is that we're trying to use software, data, and technology to shorten and strengthen the local food supply chain, eliminate waste in the system, and find a way to make local farmers, makers, and growers more competitive at a larger scale. So there's kind of the two stories of Family Dinner. It was started when I was still working at the Department of Urban Studies and Planning in a lab using data analytics to study cities, finding ways, how can you use data to make cities more efficient, more beautiful, but more equitable, nicer to live in, and started thinking about how do you use these same techniques on the super messy ball of yarn that is the food system. And so that's how we started 6 years ago.
And with your expertise or your experience with cities as a study, can you talk about the role of cities, the use of technology for what Family Dinner provides?
Sure. So Family Dinner is trying to use data analytics to do two things. The first of which is really tighten up the ordering system to eliminate waste at all levels of the local food supply chain, whether it's on the farmer's ends, in transportation, storage, in our ordering, and even at the end user. So trying to educate folks on their food so that they assign a little bit more value to it so you're less likely to throw it away. But also working with the farmers to do predictive planning. So understanding how can they plant directly for Family Dinner a season in advance, having the confidence that they will have a marketplace for the items that they grow, which is kind of different, right? Because it's always a crapshoot for them. They plant their stuff, they hope it grows, they hope someone buys it. This is a little bit of a different model. Right. We're trying to support them directly from the beginning.
And can you talk about your relationship with the farmers and how that kind of coincides with Family Dinner from 6 years ago to today?
Sure. There were interesting conversations when we started Family Dinner. We started out of our apartment in Somerville, which is how so many great companies around here start, like me and my husband on a weekend with the no time that we had running this company. And so we started talking to farmers, having these little conversations like, hey, we have this neat idea. And it was like, yeah, cute story, kid, when you needed 5 pounds of something and 10 pounds of something else. The conversation now, 6 years later, becomes much more compelling when you can say to them, we don't need 5 pounds of something, we need 1,000 every week. We need to buy whole animals from you because that's how we're doing things more holistically and doing things that are better for the planet. So those conversations become different. Additionally, we want to work with them very closely to do a handful of things, not just the planning in advance, which is great, but also work with them if they were to say, hey, I have a huge crop of carrots. I've got thousands of pounds of carrots. We can say yes and help them find ways to move it so that they are not having that financial risk and that waste isn't happening on their end. But what we're trying to do is that instead of having a brick and mortar, like a lot of physical grocery stores or food supply places do, we operate online through an e-commerce subscription platform. And this is cool for the farmers because it kind of blows the doors off what they're able to do geographically. A farmer in, let's say, northern Massachusetts is a small family farmer, is very unlikely to sell to someone who lives near the Cape. They're kind of limited by the number of farmers markets that they're willing to drive to, or the number of people on the flip side who are willing to drive to them to pick up a CSA. So you've got this kind of financial and geographic constraint. But with us, we deliver to anybody on the 495 belt, up into New Hampshire and into Maine. And so that kind of widens the whole market reach for farmers without them having to do any like really annoying garbage like customer acquisition, customer support, like all the things that make having a business frictiony and frankly annoying sometimes.
Yeah.
So they can have this huge market share without having to do a lot of the back work, the back end work. And it just lets farmers do the thing that they're awesome at, which is grow amazing food and do it right.
That's fantastic. And when I'm listening to you, I have like a couple questions. I don't know if other people do, and we will have a Q&A at the end. Can you define what is waste? I feel like waste is like a sociological question. It's like actually tangible, but it's like this esoteric thing that like affects our daily lives. So can you talk about what is waste? And can you also tell us what a CSA is?
Sure, yeah. The short answer, a CSA is community-supported agriculture. It's when you buy a chunk of stuff in advance from a farm, and then whatever they have that week, you get a box of it, whether you like it or not sometimes. Like maybe if you're not real into beets or kohlrabi, it's still showing up in your box because that's the season. We're a little bit different. We source from about 80 to 100 different farms, so you're getting a huge variety of things, not trying to pummel you with beets all the time. Food waste, right, I think we get it, but the idea is that anything that is nutritious, edible, and could be consumed by a person that ends up being discarded for one way or another. And this happens, once again, at all levels of the food supply chain, whether it's things being left in the field because they're a little bit not so pretty, whether they're being damaged in transportation, in storage, whether you're just not buying it in the grocery store and it ends up wasted in that way, or, once again, in your own house. Right. Like, how many people have like a gross looking banana on their counter right now? I for sure do, right? So yeah, so it happens at all levels. And the thing that is rather shocking is that we know that about 30 to 40% of all food in the United States every year is thrown away. Everything that is produced. And even if that number were inaccurate by half, which it is not, that would still be egregious. Because what you're talking about is 120 billion pounds of food. And maybe you're trying to figure out what that means financially. It's hard to assess that. And people say between 150 billion and 400 billion dollars, which is massive. But it's not just the thing that you throw away. Let's say you go to whatever Whole Foods and you buy, I don't know, mashed potatoes or something. It's not just you throwing away potatoes that you don't eat. We're throwing away all the resources that went into it, right? All the water, the nutrients that went into it, any fertilizers, natural or unnatural, the human capital, the CO2 emissions in transport, the emissions that are involved with storage, all of the plastic container it sits in. It's not, I don't know why I picked mashed potatoes, but it's not just mashed potatoes that you're throwing away. It's all of that other stuff. It's all that other waste that goes along with it that becomes much more significant. And I think we'd be remiss to say that as we're wasting all this food, food is also incredibly scarce in many parts of this country. We know that 45 million Americans every year face food insecurity. Depending on who you ask, that's either 1 in 5 or 1 in 6 children included into that. And that's like mind-boggling when you think about the ubiquity of food, that it's everywhere, so much that we can throw away 120 billion pounds of it, and that so many people are lacking in it. And, you know, spoiler alert, that food insecurity is, the brunt of that is borne by people of color. Due to systemic racism, decades of financial oppression, and other things that we can talk about. But so that amount of waste isn't just the old crappy banana. There's a lot of other stuff in it, and all the injustice that comes along with it.
Thank you so much for that. That was really impactful, and I think that opens up a whole other can of worms. Maybe you could talk about another time. But when we understand like the place, we understand the thing, we understand the relationship. Can you talk to us now about the customer? Specifically like the customer experience, like what does point zero look like and what does success or completion look like for a customer?
Sure. So Family Dinner is a weekly subscription service. Customers are in every week unless they opt out. We like to provide that flexibility for customers because if you're going to travel for 6 weeks, we don't want you to be stuck with this food. So customers are in every week, orders process on Monday, and all the sort of back-end custom coding that we've done to work with that sits on AWS allows us to understand exactly what we need to order in any week. So let's say we need 400 pounds of some kind of fish. I order 402. What if one bag is broken or it looks terrible or something? So we're not ordering 30% over. And that's important because you all know that the margins in food business are razor thin. But if you're not, even just thinking about it financially, if you're not throwing all that stuff in the trash, right, that's no longer a cost to you. So all of that ordering happens from us on Monday, but the customer then on Friday receives an email from us that tells them exactly what's in their share, all the farmers who grew it, some ideas on how to use it, some ideas on how to reuse it, like all your leftovers. We talk about fried rice a lot because it's delicious and it can empty your fridge all the time. Also, everything can be a pizza. Okay, that's important. And so we try to educate the customers. We try to make it fun. And so we also want to tell the story of small local farms. There are other local food businesses who like to white label things. Slap a label on that says, local meat. We don't do that. I don't raise cows or chickens, right? We want to tell the story of the farm. We don't want to rob them of their brand. The brand elevation of small local farmers, I think, is their currency. It's critically important, so we like to share that. And then we deliver to them directly to customers' doors 2 days a week on Saturdays and Tuesdays. And some customers like to read in advance what's in their share. They like to know. And other folks just like it to be like Christmas morning, right? You unpack it. And something that we've learned is that the most important part of Family Dinner is every week you get a cookie or a treat or a brownie. And you realize like we're all adults, we're all successful, smart people, yes, but we also all love cookies and treats. And so it's like that moment of fun and whimsy that we like to bring into it while we're trying to educate people or while we're trying to do the good work. We also like to give people treats.
I would like a cookie, so looking forward to that. We spoke about this idea of consumerism as it relates to Family Dinner and specifically certain trends. And they might not always be trends, but like keto or just different diets that folks may adopt or change or just like ideologies around, animals. How has that impacted Family Dinner and the customer's preference?
So we see the trends that happen. We see a lot of keto, a lot of no gluten, things like that. And we, in our systems, can track all customers' allergies and aversions, and that goes directly into our ordering. We have found that people really don't like beets. They really don't like mushrooms, and they really don't like monkfish. Yeah. And they will write it to you in all caps with exclamation points, letting you know about those things. And so in our ordering system, we track for those allergies and aversions so that that also doesn't end up as waste. We find that one of the huge trends for us was when the pandemic hit, the business exploded. We literally doubled in 10 days. We went from doing 350 deliveries a week to 700. We had to put a wait list on that got 900 names on it because we just physically could not keep up. We couldn't do the work because you had to have a limited task force. And these are like high-class problems as so many other restaurants and bars were closing. I understand that. But it was logistically really hard. And financially, as a company, to have 900 people who want your business that you just have to say no to was like tough. Yeah. While it being also just a really tough time, right? My husband and I talk about how I would wake up before work at 5 a.m. and put on my overalls and cry, which is not me as a human being. But it was, because it was scary. You didn't know what you were risking, and you didn't know what you were doing, but it felt important. And at the time, people are starting to realize how important local food is, because it literally became the question of how few hands can touch your food out of the ground to the plate on your table. And so that was something that was really reinforced for people.
My next question is a nod to Professor Levi on operations and logistics. You were talking about it. Can you talk about how it goes from like the farm to the customer?
Yeah, so we work directly with the farmers. Some of them like a text, some of them like an email. It's all very personal. And on Monday mornings, we sort of reach our hands out and find out what's available. Everything comes then into our distribution facility in Woburn, where we pack it all up 2 days a week, and then a series of drivers come in and deliver to people's homes. That driving logistics helps us solve the problem of the last mile.
Right.
And we do that with a route optimization software called OnFleet. It also is a communication platform to the customers. And that whole system is something that we really baked over 6 years.
Right.
When we first started, it was so messy and like super inefficient, and we made 1,000 incredibly dumb mistakes that I'm happy to talk about. But we sort of honed the system to the point that we realized that the structure that we had set up is transferable. Could we pick up this system that we have built in Massachusetts and move it to the Ozarks, to Hudson, New York, to California? Is this system transferable? Not as a cookie cutter. You have to obviously rebuild the networks of trust and the farmers, et cetera. But we did it. 2 years ago, we picked up and we started Family Dinner in Portland, Maine. Same system, same technology, same processes, new farmers, new customers, new workers, new facility.
Wow. I do kind of want to hear about some of the mistakes.
Oh, God. Real simple thing is that like when you're starting, I feel like when we're starting, you're running at 1,000 miles an hour and trying to make decisions as fast as you can. And sometimes you just need to like slow down and like ask one other person before like making all these decisions yourself. Like a foolish example is that we knew we wanted to use reusable bags. And we were like, okay, what should these look like? And we're like, ooh, white organic cotton. That's the right idea. Which is basically like wearing a white t-shirt to a barbecue competition. Like it's gonna look like trash after 1 week. It's gonna look terrible. And had I asked one other human being that question, they would have said that's the stupidest idea ever. You should not use white bags. They will look terrible. But that is just a facile example of dozens and dozens. And you just have to hone it and keep iterating and keep trying.
Do the farmers offer advice as well on like?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's running a business. Everyone's got an opinion, and sometimes they're great, and sometimes you just nod. And the hard thing is, you know, when you start a business, everybody's like, oh, you should do school lunches. You should make dog food. You should have yard sales with like cookies and brownies. Like, you have to have an idea of exactly what you're trying to do.
Right.
What is goal number 1? What is goal number 2? And everybody else's ideas, you're psyched to hear them. They have to live in a tertiary pile. That can be reviewed later, but you can't take your eye off of goal number 1 and goal number 2.
Yeah. And the last logistics question, just to make sure I understand, what is the last mile?
It's just how do you get the things directly to your customer?
Okay.
Like how does this show up from my facility to your door?
Okay.
And so the nice thing about Family Dinner is that it's coming from the farm to our facility to your door.
Okay.
You're not talking about a giant, you're not talking about things traveling 3,500 miles to get to your plate.
Okay. I think I understand. That's fantastic. And I'm looking forward to, like I said, those cookies, but also just understanding more about what they offer maybe by season. Does it change?
Sure. I mean, it's New England, right? Like this would be a very different business in California.
Oh, wow.
In New England, we have to hustle because it snows. Nothing grows after, November. Talking about a lot of root vegetables, and you have to find farmers who are doing interesting things indoors. Growing mushrooms, microgreens, hothouse tomatoes, things like that. And it's not easy, and it for sure gets repetitive. Wow. But the nice thing about what we do is that it isn't just veggies. We also still have fish and meat and fresh pasta and bread and pastries and things like that to round it out and hopefully keep people happy in the colder months. But I'd love to hear from you guys and hear any questions or insults or criticisms. So throw them out at any time.
How do you decide your radius of customers and what is the line of being too far to distribute?
Yeah, that's a huge question. And that question was much easier. Right during the pandemic, we're anywhere in 495, the 495 belt. That makes sense. Tried to figure out what it costs to deliver to a certain customer. Obviously, that's cheaper in super dense areas like Cambridge and Somerville, where we have an enormous amount of customers. Yeah. But as you head out to down to the Cape, you're driving far. And you're kind of hanging your hat on, well, we'll get more customers. We'll get more customers down there. And sometimes you do, and sometimes you don't. And so we're in a moment now of trying to figure out exactly that question. What is too far? And you have to make a hard decision of I love this customer. They've been around with us for 5 years, but it costs me money to bring you food. And that's tough. You want to just make a business decision, but at the same time, it feels emotional because you don't want to say no to anybody. Right. But that's not easy.
That was a fantastic question. It leads me to kind of the orientation of the customer. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about what the average customer what that demographic looks like or who you've typically served?
Sure. You're still primarily your customers at this point. Your main customer is primarily women at this point because women are still making in the United States a lot of the food decisions. It is unfortunately customers with a higher economic background, and that's because local food is expensive. I wish it weren't so, but that is true. And it hurts to say it as far as the mission. If you believe that local food should be available to people, fresh, healthy local food should be available. It shouldn't be. It's available to you because you're wealthy. But that is unfortunately in this moment the truth, and we can talk more about that and the government's role in that. But that's the customer in this moment. We would love nothing more than to be able to accept SNAP and the Massachusetts label on top of that of HIP, but we can't. At this point, it's only Whole Foods and Amazon, Walmart that are able to accept SNAP online.
What is the restriction? Is it logistics or?
No, it's because we don't have a brick and mortar.
Oh.
Because you're not able to check people's cards.
These programs do not. They do not allow you to do that.
That's correct. So if we were to have a mobile truck, if we were to have a farmer's market, we wouldn't have that. Nobody comes to family dinner. We just go directly to them. And so you're stuck in this position of you want to bring people food and you just can't do it. And so that is the customer base. And it's interesting, as I pack the shares on Tuesdays and Saturdays, you can tell when it's Somerville and Cambridge because they're smaller, right? Single people or couples. And you can tell when you're getting out to the suburbs because you've got 4 gallons of milk, like all this different stuff. So you can tell the geographic trends in that way as well.
Wow. And with the the packing, how many people are a part of that process?
So on a good day, if we are fully staffed, you've got 8 people packing all the shares. Sometimes it's just 4 or 5 of us, and I tend to look like an octopus on fast forward, just like hands everywhere, packing as fast as I can. But I also love it. It's a weird little group of people. We listen to like 90s hip hop and tell bad jokes, and we just get it done.
I love that. I have a couple other questions that I definitely want to hear from the audience. Can you talk about like some of the challenges? I know you've highlighted a few, but like some other kind of top line challenges that family donors encounter.
I mean, that question is a huge one. Your question about where do you deliver and how frequently and when do you cut it off is a big one. And the secondary question is where do you put your advertising dollars to target people in that area is another big question. I think the hardest thing about running a business or starting a business is getting people to care.
Yeah.
Right, is getting to people to care and then care enough, break through all that static and the noise and the competitors and whatever, and care enough that they're going to spend their money with you versus somebody else. And to keep them by doing all the other stuff, high quality product, excellent customer service, all that stuff. But if they don't care, you're never going to get them in the first place. And that is really complicated. I think that there's something for everybody in the story of local food, whether you care about workers' justice, high quality food, what doesn't go into your food, antibiotics, pesticides, et cetera, whether you just like super awesome tasting food. There's kind of something where you care about animals or workers' rights. There's something for everybody. But it's telling that story and getting a hook into folks that is really, it's hard.
And who, outside of like systems and things, do you have peer competitors or like in the area?
Yes, I mean, we like to say that our primary competitor is Whole Foods, right? Which is a huge thing. But at that point, you've got people who are paying, who have a certain amount of money that they're able to spend on good food. Other than that, I wouldn't say that the farmers markets or the CSAs are our competitors because they're our partners.
Allies.
And they're and they're why we started this thing in the first place. The nuts and bolts are that Walden Local Meats are our competitor for sure. I think we've got a different offering. I think we've got a different story. But I do believe that like anybody who's working local food, as you said, is an ally.
Yeah.
We would like a little bit more of the market than they would, but I do see them all as partners.
Thank you so much. I am super curious to open, and I wanted to open it up to anyone who has questions. Oh, yes. Yes.
I wanted to follow up on the topic of customer. We've been talking a lot about customers. I'm curious to see what customer churn looks like at family dinner, and what are the primary reasons why they leave? How do you try to combat that?
Sure. So churn is a problem. I think that this is a great question. Churn is a problem. We track it. We know that if we can get people for about 6 orders, then we kind of have them. We track their average order value, the lifetime customer value. But the things that we see for churn primarily is that people really want hyper-personalization. They want what they want. It takes us, and I get it. It takes a certain person to say, like, just kind of bring me whatever, as long as it's no beets, no mushrooms, no monkfish, anything's great. And so it's our job to figure out how do we increase the options, increase the personalization opportunities at family dinner, so that it's not just here's your bag of veggies and meats, but you can add on every week a bread, a fresh pasta. You want a whole chicken, here it is. You want ground beef every week. So we have a lot of a la carte options. It's also a business decision to try to get people to engage in the store more, to want to see this as sort of a fun shopping experience, and to increase the average order value in that way. So personalization is a reason for churn. Cost, for sure. It's, again, this is local food. We've heard people say, oh, I can get so much more food for this amount of money at Market Basket. And it's like, totally. Like, I can't argue with you. You absolutely can. Because I can't get you a chicken for $1.19 a pound, right? Raising animals the right way does not cost that amount of money. So I'd say personalization, churn, convenience. It's hard for people to understand why an order is processed on Monday and then they don't get it till Saturday, when Amazon will deliver you, whatever, 40 bags of Annie's mac and cheese in an hour.
Do you communicate that, just to follow up, do you communicate that premium that you place because of the quality, because of, the emphasis on like quality, local, like how do you?
We really try. And we want to, we try to push, especially through the newsletter that we're sending to people, like, these are the farmers, these are the people you are supporting, right? This is the value of this food. We try to share that value with the customers in that way. It's a difficult thing to say, like, it's expensive because it's awesome. I would love to, but I don't think that's, I don't know if it's compelling. But we do try to share the value, and we try really hard to be very good at customer service. And I think that is a value to the customers. And sometimes it feels really good because you get wonderful feedback, or if you've messed up, which we do, you go above and beyond to fix it. And sometimes people are just grumpy. Why are you giving me gingerbread cookies? I don't like gingerbread cookies. It's like, lady, A, I didn't know that, and B, it's a pandemic. Just take your cookies. So like, customer service is I think another value add that we have.
Hi, my name is Debbie. So I'm also an ally, been working in the food system here locally for the past 15 years. I'm trying to understand a little bit more, so if you will bear with me. I've witnessed a lot of smaller businesses trying to sort of develop with the similar ideas. The larger ones that sort of made it in a way, Walden talked about, there are dairy companies that have tried to do this. I wrote out a bunch of things, Rico, Weldon, Clover, Boston Organics, Commonwealth Kitchen, Hazardous Produce.
Yep.
Plenty of companies who have tried to do this model at scale. We're not talking about 1,000 pounds of carrots a week. We're talking about a million pounds of carrots. That didn't work for them. So, in your opinion, like, how are you building out this digital supply chain in such a small scale? Because how is that meaningful from a sort of a systematic perspective if it's just such a niche thing? And how do you compete with other producers such as Purple Carrots who are literally piggybacking on the waste of this existing system, brand it as sort of premium, as customizable, and so on and so forth, yet send it out to like millions of households? Like, how do you see this economic landscape from this small point to scale?
Yeah, so I mean, I think, so when we started, we were delivering to 7 people a week. It's just our friends forgiving us for making all the mistakes that we were making, and the impact that we were having on any given small farmer was not huge, right? Again, the 10 pounds a week. Delivering to 700 families a week is much more impactful to those farmers. And for many of the farmers and producers that we work with, we represent a large portion of their sales, because these aren't huge farms, right? These are small family farms. And that becomes even more impactful when we're talking about animals, that we buy whole animals from them. We plan those out over time. So though we're not selling millions of pounds of carrots to tens of thousands of homes, I mean, maybe yet, I don't know, I'd love that. I think that for the farmers that we work with, working with us is impactful. And I think that's one of the things that means the most to us. We would love Family Dinner to grow. We would love to have little outposts spread across different geographies. We think it's feasible. The question of scale and how to get there, how to get those next 1,000 people, is the nut that we're trying to crack all day, every day, and it is elusive in many ways. Trying to figure out what the market wants at any given moment isn't obvious. We know that people are interested in local food. We know that people are interested in this type of thing. We're just trying to do an offering that's just a little bit different.
Thank you for that question.
Hi, I'm a family dinner super fan. Excuse me, yeah, super fan here. And I'm curious about the pandemic, and I witnessed just how difficult it was, to just take in all those new orders. And I'm curious on the data side of things, how long did it take for you to calibrate it to a point where you felt like you could actually function, and what are still some limitations of the technology, or even just how long does it take for farmers to calibrate based on the demand that you have, any increase in demand? I'm just curious on the tech side.
Sure. The nice thing is that I think that one of the things that we have that's most settled is the tech platform, is the systems and the process, right? That thing, we've gotten it to a point that it is very efficient, not an enormous amount of errors, and it does an incredible amount of work for us. We try to automate as many things as we possibly can. The things that are stickier points are the questions of new customer acquisition, are the questions of scale, are the questions of logistics and how far do you travel. Those things, again, are, I think, some of the more complicated things that we're trying to deal with. Luckily, during the pandemic, we had this suite of technologies that we could lean upon that really helped us out. The hardest thing about the pandemic was sort of the emotional or physical side of it, of just working a lot. And also always trying to figure out, do we feel okay? Is this the right decision? Is this safe for our team? Is this safe for our customers? As people were bleaching boxes of Cheerios and leaving them outside their houses because nobody knew what was going on. That felt really scary. And so I think the tech platform is doing an enormous amount for us. There's more I think we could do as far as the customer side of it, understanding customer trends and understanding what do people want. Why are they at Purple Carrot and not at family dinner? That's definitely work that I would love to have time to get into because I think it's essential, but we haven't gotten there.
Thank you for that question. I think did you have a question earlier?
I did have a question, which was actually partially answered when you answered her question. So I come from a farming background, and my family operates a few farms. But two of the farms, one of them has been extraordinarily successful in terms of longevity, and the other one has been incredibly successful in terms of scale. And principally, the farm scaled through the Land Lakes Cooperative, and I took the point about recognizing Native American land, at the beginning of this talk, particularly. But so my question was sort of two-point, which was on the topic of scaling. So my family had a family farm that scaled through the Land Lakes Cooperative. But so to what extent do your family farmers also have the opportunity to scale operations like that? And sort of what business models you're looking at. But then also, do you advocate for sustainable farming practices for the larger farmers that are operating at that scale?
Sure. So to the question of local farmers scaling, we've been partners with a few of the small family farms that we've worked with as they're applying for grants. Let's say they had 2 acres and they're applying to have 10. Again, these are not massive farms, right? And they're applying through government grants or others to have 10 acres. We've partnered with them to say, listen, this is our model. If they have this amount of land, we can commit to buying this amount of food from them. So this farm who's applying to get more land will then have an automatic market with us. We've done that sort of advocacy work with them. We also have fired farmers for hey, listen, we thought that this is how you were raising your animals. That's not what I'm seeing when I'm here. And everything, we have to spend a lot of time on the farms. We have to visit people because we're telling our customers that this is high quality stuff, that the animals are raised ethically, that all of this is done the right way. And if it isn't, that currency of trust, which is the most important token we have, is gone. So we have advocated in the way of saying, we will no longer do business with you if this is what we're looking at. We have supported family farms on their grants and their other applications. As far as having them scale to larger things like the Land O'Lakes Collaborative, that's not something I've been a part of. I'm sure that exists in Massachusetts, but I know that a lot of these farms are also parts of larger distribution networks like Myers, Three River, other places like that.
This time?
It's time for a question.
Yeah.
So I understand at the beginning you made reasonable decision to focus on individual households, consumers, and really provide mostly raw food and less minimally. I mean, maybe the breads are processed.
Yeah.
But if you think about that, one way to scale is to start, let's say, supply restaurants and other places that process the food, because I suspect that they also have sourcing problems, and some of them do care about, as part of their branding, to use local produce or locally grown inputs, and I can also imagine that they can view you not only as something that enables them to source more strategically or more effectively, but also maybe as a channel then to sell some of their output to your customers.
Exactly. Yeah.
Is that something reasonable to think about?
Yes, this is a great point, and we started doing that as a kind of a marketing ploy early. So we would sell to, I don't know if you know, Semolina or Highland Kitchen or Trina's and Parlor Sports. Trina's and Parlor Sports is where we started this company, like drinking beer and writing ideas down on a napkin. But we started selling to them small bits of seasonal things every week that they would include in their specials, and then they would include us in their marketing. So we'd be on their Instagram, we'd be on their menu.
But you can also sell their outputs, right? Like
yes.
You can be a delivery service as well, right?
So, yes, in some ways. So some of these places, we primarily, as you said, do raw ingredients, but we also do things like lasagnas and pot pies and things like that, because we've understood from our customers that they have no time and they need something that is fresh, well made, local. So we work with some businesses that do prepared foods as well. But that's actually an area that we're trying to expand upon.
So, for example, someone can use your produce to prepare a salad. Like
yeah, and then sell us the salad.
And you can sort of then...
Yes. Yeah, that's absolutely something that we're thinking about, and we need to spend more time investing in that, for sure.
Hi. The communications system that you use, is it proprietary? Do you own it?
So there are two...
I'm really interested in your plans to expand.
So there are two communication platforms that we use, one of which is the email that we use to customers, where they get, and this is fascinating to me, and maybe somebody can crack this for me. We send the newsletter out in Klaviyo, MIT kid, by the way, yes, good, on Klaviyo. It goes to about 5,000 people every week, and about 2,200 people open it. This is an interesting problem for me. About 2,200 people open it. We have 800 active customers at any given time. So who are these other people, right? Like, I know my mom reads the newsletter. I know Tim's mom reads the newsletter, but that's not the delta. Who is that delta of people, and why are they opening, reading, and clicking through this email every week? I write it. I know it's not that interesting, right? So why are people reading it? It's for some kind of content that they're after. And how do you market to those people? How do you segment, and you can do this in Klaviyo and other platforms, how do you segment the people who read your newsletter but who have never purchased an order, and then wave at them and be like, hey, I know you're a super fan. How about like 50% off a share? How can we bring you into the fold? That's an interesting question, but that's Klaviyo. And the second communication platform that we use is OnFleet, which is part of the routing optimization, which is part of the routing software. So Christina's getting her delivery, and she gets a text that says family dinner's on their way. They'll be here at this time. She can track them in real time. The driver can text her and say, hey, I left it next to your cat outside or whatever. So those are the two primary platforms. We do some amount of social. Again, it's me who does it. It's not super well done, and it also needs more effort. But I don't enjoy doing it, so I don't.
Before the next question, are we good on time?
I think we can take one more question.
Okay, one more question. Who has the burning desire? Okay, yes.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I am going to sneak two short questions into the one question. But one is, what has been the trade-off between trying to do a delivery versus central pickup locations? For instance, our poor Cape Cod customer, if you're like, well, we can do Plymouth and that's the limit, but meeting halfway.
Yep.
And then how have you had any trouble trying to keep people during the winter? I know I've done a CSA before, and I still can't see another sweet potato again for a little while.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I wonder, do people often try to go, or often does it just get supplemented by more finished product and people will still stick around?
Sure. So to your first question about pickups, kind of touches on his question and her question. Because couldn't we work with a local restaurant or a local place like Forge that sells us baked goods to have a pickup there? Sienna Farms and others do it. Even Mamala's was finding a way during the pandemic to have people come and do pickups in like parking lots all over the greater Boston area, and they had great success in that. We have tried that on a very small scale, but we definitely need to think about that more because it would address the question that she had as far as how do you get to these far-flung people. It becomes a question of how many people will do it, how much do you have to pay a driver to sit there, is that entirely wasted time of having 3 hours if it's 10, 15 deliveries and just basically doing the math. Winter is surprisingly still very busy for us. It is the summer that isn't busy, and that makes no sense. Because like all the cool stuff is actually coming out of the ground in Massachusetts and you're not drowning in sweet potatoes, but people travel. They have their second home, which feels incredible, good for you, but they've got another home somewhere that they travel to. And so we've tried to have our Woburn location as a pickup, like, hey, as you head up to Maine or New Hampshire, stop by and pick it up. Occasionally successful, not super, but those are the two answers.
Thank you. Yeah.
Follow-up to that, is that because deliveries are on Saturdays?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we can do Saturdays and Tuesday. We originally thought of Tuesday as like, hey, we'll deliver to your office. How do we deliver to Akamai and work with Akamai to get, and that's just an example, to get 40 customers on board? We're working with like benefits, the HR and benefits groups, the wellness groups within these companies. Instead of having one person, how do we get 40? And can Akamai, again, that's just an example, can Akamai subsidize in some way? We can offer a small discount, they can offer a discount. It becomes advantageous for the employee and we can drop off 40 shares instead of 2. So that's a goal as we're thinking about trying to scale and trying to think about minimizing the logistical headaches that you were mentioning.
All right, thank you. So before we all go, I would be remiss, I'm a business school student. We all have internships. I don't know if this is allowed, but I'm gonna ask, do you have interns or do you, like, is that a thing you ever considered?
We don't have interns yet, bright-eyed students.
We also offer subsidies for internships.
Wonderful.
Look at that.
Better bright-eyed subsidized students.
I'm just hearing so much brilliance, and I was like, it's like 8 employees is rather lean, but I just thought I would throw that out there. How can we keep up with what you're doing?
You can follow us on social. We're at Share Family Dinner. We are on Instagram and Facebook, and I will not do TikTok. I apologize. I also don't apologize. I don't want to do it. And so, yeah, and you can sign up for our newsletter and be one of those people who orders. We'd also love to have you if you want to try family dinner. I can give you a discount code and have you give it a shot. I'd love to chat with you guys more. This has just been awesome. And it's so fun to see so many folks who are interested in local food. It really makes me feel good. So this is a really nice day. And I appreciate all your questions and your input. And I'm still waiting for insults so they can come too.
Thanks so much, y'all. Have a great day.